right to say. Here we go. Civil rights movement. Women's rights. Pretty much the majority of the pushes for good things. Wasn't there a white man who fought for us too? Yeah, there was. Yep. And now that white men are being put down and talked about and demonized, nobody wants to fight for them. Fuck that. Tell me what y'all need. I'm speaking up. I'm about to say.
What it do? This is your brother Bishop of Bishop's Own TV. And today, man, look, I got to talk about black conservatives. My problem with black conservatives is about to go there. It's about to go there. Before I go into my whole spiel, though, don't forget to like and subscribe and tell a friend to tell a friend who got a nosy friend, who got a loud friend. Tell them all so they can come to my channel and get those subscribers up. I need those subscribers. I need that money. I need that chump change, y'all. I'm just joking, but not really. I'm not joking. So let's get back to the topic at hand. Black conservatives. What's my problem with black conservatives? Now, for the record, I am not a black Democrat. I am not a Democrat. I don't believe in a two-party system. I believe that black people wholeheartedly haven't benefited from either party. They overwhelmingly vote Democrats, and yes, the Democrats have done nothing impactful for black people. Ever since black people have just thrust themselves into the Democratic Party, it really hasn't paid off. It really hasn't paid off. So conservatives, black conservatives, I understand where y'all coming from. I completely get it. You're tired of the Democratic plantation and you want to go to something new. You see the results of black people pledging and standing strong behind the Democratic Party. You see the results. You can see the matrix. And so you say, you know what? I'm fed up and I'm going to the other party. But in my opinion, and we're talking from a political perspective, so if some of my Caucasian friends happen to see this video, this is not about y'all. We're talking politics. We're talking the system, the political system. But black folks who have jumped ship and jumped to the conservative ship, because a lot of times, and the conservative plantation, because a lot of times these black conservatives kind of start off, well, you know, I used to be a Democrat. I used to be a black Democrat, and then I saw the error of my ways, and I decided I need to go over to the west side. I need to go, because you and I know it's the best side. Even LA got a piece of this. Shouts out to Tupac, rest in peace. Dr. Dre, California Love, if y'all get that reference. But a lot of y'all, it seems as though y'all are disingenuous about y'all affiliation with conservatives. Because I often look at it like, in a way, these are black people who are just frustrated with the Democratic system. They're frustrated with the Democratic Party. So they're going over to the other party. It's out of spite. It's out of spite that they're going. So it's like, yeah, you believe that the Democratic Party isn't doing black people any good. But instead of saying, you know what, maybe I should just get out of the political realm altogether. No, I'm going to stay on the plantation. I'm just going with massive conservative. And that's essentially what it is. You're going over to massive conservative instead of massive Democrats. Because what has the conservative party, what has the Republican Party done for black people? I've heard some black conservatives say, well, they freed slaves. Man, we're using 1800 ideology to fit into 2022. Really? That's what we do, black conservatives. But I think it's something even more sinister behind the rise of black conservatives. And the rise of black conservatives also stems from the fact that it's really a mammy tactic. It's a mammy in what's the slave that Samuel Jackson played from Django? I cannot remember his name, but it's really just some slave plantation trickery. It's some slave plantation allegiance. Now, don't get me wrong. The fact that black people have overwhelmingly showed their allegiance to a party that don't give a shit about them is also plantation allegiance. It's plantation's politics, right? However, one thing I can say about black people who vote for the Democratic Party, they usually show their mammyisms during election season. You know, it's like confined to the election season. It's confined to politics. Whereas black conservatives seem to mammy and pappy white folks 24/7. 24/7. You think I'm lying? I mean, god damn, just go on some of the YouTubers who are black conservatives channel. Everything revolves around white political ideologies from a conservative perspective. Like every damn video. You go on Officer Tatum, every week is something that revolves around white conservative political ideology. I mean, just look at the shit. You saw the video in the beginning. It's like, wow. It's like black. So it's like, is it really about the conservative policies, or is it about defending and supporting and honoring white folks? Because if it's not, why is everything centered around white people? This is the problem I have with black conservatives. Black conservatives are not ready to leave the political plantation. They're not ready. They're like Hebrew Israelites. You know, Hebrew Israelites, at one point in time, a lot of these brothers were devoted Christians, and then they just had enough of mainstream Christianity. So it was like, well, I'm not ready necessarily to leave religion, but I'm just going to join a more radical religion. Therefore, I can have my radical beliefs and have my religion all at once. And that's basically what a lot of black conservatives are. And that's essentially the two classes of black conservatives. On one hand, you have black people who, look, they just center their life around white people. They want to make white people happy. They want to make sure that white people are okay. And it's really a survival tactic too. This was something that a lot of our people did during slavery. This is why I say slavery politics. We make sure that white people are good. If we can ensure that white people are good and feeling safe and secure, then that can ensure our safety here in this country. Hey, it worked for some enslaved people during chattel slavery, so it gotta work now. Maybe they will respect us, and that's because these black conservatives and black Democrats and black people in general don't respect themselves. They don't respect themselves. Also, the other half of black conservatives were actually devoted Democrats that feel as though the Democrats have left them completely, have not done anything for black people, which is true. But again, they cannot leave politics alone. They're just so tied to politics being the be all end all for black people that, well, you know what? Enough of Democrats. Let's go with Republicans. And if we want to just go by political strategy, black America, this is my personal opinion. You know the Democrats have done nothing for you. And if you think that the conservatives are good white folk, you're in for a rude awakening. You're losing your political position in this country, your political influence in this country. You're losing it to Asian and the growing Asian and Hispanic population in this country. You're losing your political status. Why not try something completely different and maybe turn the tides of politics in America altogether, and instead of voting for the Republicans or the Democrats, maybe vote for the third party option? I know it would never happen, but just think about if majority of black people decided, you know what, let's just vote for the third party option. Not vote down, not vote Republican, but vote for a third party option on the basis of a ethno-political agenda, an ethno-political campaign. Instead of trying to attach blackness to Democrats or blackness to conservatives, just escape both plantations altogether and balance and at least make an impact in the third party. That way, if majority of black people voted for a third party candidate, it would cause a shift, a major shift, where you would have to pay attention to a two-party system. you would have to question if a two-party system is even beneficial to the general American public. Black people could make that change. Black people really can make that change because black people are so tied to politics being the end-all be-all that, okay, with that involved in politics, let's just switch over. Let's just switch over our strategy. Because at the end of the day, we're still going by a civil rights political strategy that, frankly, it made little steps, but it didn't make a great impact on the collective, the masses of black people in this country. And I'm actually give y'all the article. I'm gonna show y'all an article that goes into details of why black people have not fared better under any political party. So let me read this bit from this article. Let's see. This article was taken from a book called False Black Power. And as you can see, this was done by Jason L. Riley back in 2017 in the New York Post. Why Obama's presidency didn't lead to black progress. I want y'all to see this. Why Obama's presidency didn't lead to black progress. So let me read this right here. Since 1960s, black leaders have placed a heavy emphasis on gaining political power, and Barack Obama's presidency represented the apex of those efforts. The assumption, rarely challenged, is that black political clout must come before black social and economic advancement. But as Jason L. Riley argues in this excerpt from his new book, False Black Power, political success has not been a major factor in the rise of racial and ethnic groups from poverty to prosperity. So let's start off like this. Let's read it right here. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 was followed by large increases in black elected officials. In the Deep South, black office holders grew from 100 in 1964 to 4,300 in 1978. By the early 1980s, major U.S. cities with large black populations, such as Cleveland, Detroit, Chicago, Washington, and Philadelphia, had elected black mayors. Between 1970 and 2010, the number of black elected officials nationwide increased from fewer than 1,500 to more than 10,000. Yet, the social economic progress that was supposed to follow in the wake of these political gains never materialized. During an era of growing black political influence, blacks as a group progressed at a slower rate than whites, and the black poor actually lost ground. In a 1991 book, social scientist Gary Orfield and his co-author, journalist Carol Ashkenaz, assessed the progress of blacks in the 1970s and 80s, following the sharp increase in black office holders. The thinking then and now was that the problems of the cities were basically the result of racism of white officials, and that many could be solved by black mayors, school superintendents, policemen, and teachers who were displaying white ones. The expectation, they added, was that the black political and education leaders would be able to make large moves toward racial equity simply by devising policies and practices reflecting their understanding of the background and needs of black people. Did you hear that? But the integration of these institutions proved to be insufficient. Many blacks have reached positions of local power such as mayor, county commission, chairman, or superintendent of schools, positions undreamed 30 years ago, they wrote. Their findings, however, show that these achievements do not necessarily produce success for blacks as a whole. The empirical evidence, they said, indicates that there may be little relationship between the success of local black leaders and the opportunities of typical black families. When Michael Brown was shot dead after assaulting a police officer in Ferguson, Missouri in 2014, a large fuss was made over the racial composition of the police department and city leaders, which supposedly explained the subsequent civil unrest. A Justice Department report responding to the incident noted that although the city's population was 67% black, just 4 of its 54 police officers fit that description. While a diverse police department does not guarantee a constitutional one, it is nonetheless critically important for law enforcement agencies, the Ferguson Police Department in particular, to strive for broad diversity among officers and civilian staff, said Justice. But if racial diversity among law enforcement and city officials is so critically important, what explains the rioting in Baltimore the following year after a black suspect there died in police custody? At the time, 63% of Baltimore's residents and 40% of its police officers were black. The Baltimore Police Commission also was black, along with the mayor and a majority of the city council. Contentious relations between the police and the ghetto communities are driven mainly by high crime rates in those areas, something that the political left doesn't like to acknowledge. The sharp rise in violent crime in our inner cities coincides with the increase of black leaders in many of those very same cities, which makes it hard to argue that races or different authorities are to blame. What can be said of Baltimore is also true of Cleveland, Detroit, Philadelphia, Atlanta, New Orleans, and Washington, where black mayors and police chiefs and city councilmen and school superintendents have held sway for decades. In her 1995 book, Facing Up to the American Dream, political scientist Jennifer Hochschild examined data from the late 1950s to the early 1990s, an era that covers not only growing black political clout, but also the implementation of the war on poverty in 2 full decades of affirmative action policies and hiring college admissions. Hochschild reported that between 1959 and 1992, poverty fell from 55% to 33% for blacks and from 18% to 12% for whites, which means that the ratio of black to white poverty has remained at 3, hardly a victory in the war on racial disproportionate poverty. The absolute numbers, she added, tell the same story. There are now about 4 million fewer poor whites than 30 years ago, but 686,000 more poor blacks. Eesh. Moreover, low-income blacks lost ground to low-income whites over the same period, between 1967 and 1992. Incomes for the poorest fifth of blacks declined at more than double the rate of comparable whites. The history should have served to temper expectations for the first black president, without taking away anything from Barack Obama's historic accomplishment or the country's widespread sense of pride in the racial progress that his election symbolized. The reality is that there was little reason to believe that a black president was the answer to racial inequities or the problems of the black poor. The proliferation of black politicians in recent decades, which now includes a twice-elected black president, has done little to narrow racial gaps in employment, income, home ownership, academic achievement, and other areas. Most groups in America and elsewhere who have been rising economically have done so with little or no political influence, and groups that have enjoyed early political success have tended to rise more slowly. Did you hear that? Let me read that again. The proliferation and most groups in America and elsewhere who have risen economically have done so with little or no political influence. Groups that have enjoyed early political success have tended to rise more slowly. Viewed against this history, many blacks were expecting Obama's presidency to deliver more prosperity than political clout tends to deliver for a group in the U.S. or anywhere else. The black experience in America, of course, different from the Irish experience, which in turn is different from the Chinese or German or Jewish experience. Indeed, we can't even generalize about all blacks in the U.S. since the experience of black natives is different from the experience of black immigrants from the Caribbean and Africa. But that doesn't mean group cultural traits that show patterns of success or failures should be ignored. Even if we can't make perfect apples-to-apples comparison, it doesn't mean we can't make any comparisons or draw any conclusions. Many different racial and ethnic minority groups have experienced various degrees of hardships in the U.S. and other countries all over the world. How those groups have dealt with those circumstances is something to study closely and draw lessons from going forward, even if the only lesson is to manage expectations. One of the clear lessons from this history is that the human capital has proven to be far more important than political capital in being ahead. And that reality helps to explain why blacks fared the way they did not only in the Obama era, but also in the preceding decades. Obama's election was the end product of a civil rights strategy that prioritized political power to advance blacks. 8 years later, we once again learn the limitations of that strategy. Republicans are not going to save your black ass. Democrats will not save your black ass. You can still prosper on some kind of level, or at least on an individual level, in either candidacy, either political party. But the reality of the situation is this: politics is not the end all be all. If black people really want to see black people do right, if black people want to see black people progress, y'all gotta just quit with all this strong affiliations with the Republicans and the Democratic Party. Quit focusing on white ideologies, white created ideologies to save you. Because those are just trickle down any damn way. And focus on building with us, by us, building from a ethno-political perspective, and not a Republican or a Democrat, a liberal or conservative perspective. And quit the mammy. God damn it. That's what it's all about with mostly black conservatives. All that mammy and pappy. White people, they can hold their own. Collectively, they're doing better than your black ass, so they don't need you to take a bullet for them. I assure you. Just check your white people. The white people support you. I tell you what, if they really care about you, do you have a relationship with them outside of politics? Do you have a relationship? Do they confide in you in anything that has nothing to do with why does BLM do this? Why does BLM do that? If they don't confide in you in anything else outside of appeasing their needs and wants, assuring that their fears are set at bay so they can rest and sleep good at night in America, if they actually confide in you in things outside of politics, maybe, I guess that's somebody. But if it's mostly about politics, if that's what your relationship is built around, then they're using your black ass. Like the mammy and pappy that you are. So with that said, like and subscribe. Don't forget to comment. I know I'm going to have a lot of comments about this particular subject matter. And until next time, holla.